Senior Center. Today, our guest speaker, Craig Sczulinski, will talk to us about an introduction to genealogy. Please welcome Craig.
It's very nice to be here, and I want to thank Marie for setting this program up. I love talking about family history and genealogy, and today I'm going to use a story from one of my family lines that really kind of motivated me to get into genealogy in the first place. So I've been a math educator of about 15 years from my regular day job. I'd like to make this a day job at some point. But right now I'm still working as an educator. And I've been studying genealogy, I think it's been about 7 or 8 years right now. I know so there are folks in this room that may have a lot more experience than that. And you know, I just like people to ask questions if they're brief during the presentation and if they relate to the content of the slide. Also, if you want to ask a more in-depth question or a question that involves, like Marie said, something of a personal nature regarding your family, it could be done in a contact form that I have created, in that which you can have me contact you after the presentation, or you can contact me. Okay? So that's sort of a few logistics to get out of the way. Now, one more logistic is that I usually, when I do a presentation, I ask for emails of people that want to get the links for the program, so I can consider doing that after, and that's usually something I do. But the best way to get more information after the presentation is to contact me through my email. Okay? So let's start with, I do want to talk about the difference between genealogy and family history and how I see that difference. But before we do that, let's do a brief survey. So, how many folks in this room have used Ancestry.com before? Okay, a couple. How many folks in this room feel they know their ancestors very well? Not too many. Oh, one. Okay. and how many people in this room have gone on any research trips to study genealogy, where they've gotten in a car instead of sitting at home and using the internet? Okay, cool. So we have a few in all of those questions. Okay. So I'd like to talk about genealogy first. And where genealogy used to be, that how people did it was they would spend a lot of time working laboriously on family charts, and they would be very elaborate. It would be handwork. It would be a lot of concentration, done on paper, and then shared with their family members, usually by handing it to them. Also, I think in the past, a lot of times family Bibles were used to get information from families past in terms of what we call vital records, birth, marriage, and deaths. A lot of that information was written in Bibles before. So I consider that genealogy of the past and the present is about the past, and it's about information and stories about non-living people. I view genealogy as requiring research and uncovering of facts and information that our ancestors that can eliminate the particular past of any family. And that is in the form of the way that information gets shared is what you're going to see a little bit later in the presentation as far as how I do it. Okay? And in the process of you seeing how I do it, you'll get to know a little bit about my paternal great-grandmother, because this is the person I've chosen today to have you be taken on a little journey through genealogical records to discover something that my family did not know about with this particular woman, who was one of my ancestors. Okay? So the digital world today, and how does that change for a genealogist, is that I think that we all know that the digital world provides us unlimited access in ways that we might not be able to interact with information in the past. It can be done instantly. It can be done dynamically, and very much in an interactive way. Which one way I'm thinking, really off the top of my head, there's a program available. It's online. It's called a Hangout, and it's part of Google Plus. And it's a system that I'm considering using to connect with other genealogists and friends and people interested in learning more about genealogy that we're doing today. And that is something that I haven't done yet, but I'm really excited about doing it because it's a digital way to connect with others about genealogy. So these are some different points. Websites, and you can go ahead and just websites for online learning, online indexing of records, digital photography, audio and video recording, and webinars. So in my work as an educator, we're using webinars a lot more to provide professional development to our teachers. And I know as a fact from being a genealogist and studying genealogy that webinars and using technology is very big. It's used often now for sharing information. And you could actually learn genealogy without even going to a class in a physical building. You could get even a certificate for genealogy can be done online. But webinars are a very common procedure that's being used. Now those are either recorded ones or they could be recorded ones or they could be live ones. I was on one last week. A person in Salt Lake City was giving it, but the presenter was in Michigan. So they had a host for the webinar, and then they had a presenter, similar to Marie introducing me at the beginning, and then I'm the presenter. And they go through slides. The webinars, they're going through slides like we're doing here. Next slide, please. Now, here's an example of a blog that I have for one of my family lines, and it's blogs, as you will find out in my presentation today, that it is a format that's my main format right now, is that I am doing more blog work than printed work. I want to do more printed work in the form of books with a new business that I'm starting up. But right now, this is how I share my genealogy mostly. So this is an article about my great uncles who grew up in Schenectady. And my father really didn't know these two people. And I was able to cover quite a bit of information about them. And so this was the form. I took this as an image from my blog. So you just see part of it. So the way the blog works is similar to any website, where the content will scroll down, you'll see more content. Okay. Right. So here is another example of sharing genealogy that somebody wrote about other non-living people. So I consider genealogy about non-living people. And this person is named Michael Colombo, and he writes a blog called Mountain View People. I used to live in Oakland, California, and there used to be, there is a huge, beautiful cemetery on a series of hills. It's called Mountain View Cemetery, and this man gives tours of the cemetery, but then he was interested in finding out more about the people that were buried there, and ended up creating a blog to highlight individuals that he chose to highlight. But he researched the past of these people, and he found images about what they did when they worked as. Actually, I think one of his current blog posts is about a man who started Folger's Coffee Company, and he's buried there. And it's actually two men that had to do with Folger's is there, and he wrote, just writing about one of them. If we have time, I want to show a couple websites live. You know, is it easy to just switch over because the link is right there? You want to switch over and we can.
Would you like to exit and try with Mountain View people?
No, you don't want to exit yet. You want to click that with your mouse first. And then it should go right. If we're connected to the internet, it should go right to the internet. So we'll wait a second and see if that comes up. Okay, it doesn't look like it's connecting, so why don't we go back to the slideshow. Now that's okay. We don't need the internet today because I made all the images that we needed to see for my presentation. So we're not losing anything. And in fact, this is a site that you can see at your leisure at some point. Okay, next slide, please. So genealogy is about records. So we're still talking about genealogy now. Genealogy is about records. It's about searching for them and studying them. And then writing comes after. But so the genealogy part is the searching and the studying. And then we can go ahead and click let's just click one at a time. So the pedigree chart and the family group sheet are the two most common forms that are used to start a genealogy. And how many people have heard of a pedigree chart before? Okay, so a pedigree chart, and I have a picture of one that I can show at the end because it's at the end of the slides, but it's where you have your say if you can, a very easy and quick chart could be the great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, and then the person that's, if I wanted to start with myself, then it would go from there. So you can go forwards or backwards, right? If you're an older person, you could, that involves a different approach. But mostly we're talking about going backwards for genealogy. Because in family history, you're talking about a lot of living people. And you'll see what I mean by that, because I'll explain family history in a second. So we can get it in. And then, so these are vital records. These are some of you can go ahead and finish off this whole. So these are just the more basic records that a genealogist would obtain to learn about their ancestors. Right? So, and now the story of my paternal great-grandmother, let me just point out a couple of the records that were really important for my discovering what I discovered. This was somewhat important, but for today's presentation, this became very important. I couldn't have found what I found without the church record. I actually found her obituary through a newspaper article that was online, and I found her, well, you'll see. I don't want to spoil the show. So let's go to the next slide. So now let's talk about family history for a while. Family history is really not just about the past, but it can be a lot about the present or the recent past. Okay, so that's what, like your, if you have an agenda today, one of the items on there is, and I italicized the word recent, because family history can be about interviewing folks when they're still around. And so that is really a key message that I would like to give to you today for my talk, is the importance of recording conversations or interviews where pre-selected questions are being asked of living elders or others in the family, and to do it today. So if there's any key message to walk away with today, it is that. You could also record yourself. Because some families may not have some folks that are considered the family historians, quote unquote, or they might not have somebody that is able to speak and to share. But individuals that have interest in genealogy and family history, they can record themselves. And you can do that with various technologies. One, you can speak into your iPhone if you happen to have a smartphone. A lot of those phones have an app that you can just start recording. That's one way to record. It saves it as a file. Another way is to have a voice recorder. I have a digital voice recorder that I've been using, but I don't use it as much because we have all these other technologies. Another one is the iPad. There's an app on the iPad called SoundNote, and it's an app where you can actually record a speaker. You could be recording me speak now, and you could be taking little notes. Oh, he's talking about family history now, or he's talking about records, and you can type in records. And then when you tap that later on, when the file is closed, it will go to that part where I'm talking about records. That's how savvy that technology is these days. So I recorded my parents for about between 5 and 10 hours, about 5 hours for my father and 5 hours for my mother in 2007. And then translated, or rather transcribed it. And so I have all of these, and all these tabs that you see on pages are tabs that I decided that these were pieces that I wanted to share and create stories and add pictures to for my blog, you see. So this didn't get turned into a physical hardcopy book. I may still do that, but this is the reference that I use to add more stories. And believe me, when you record somebody for 5 hours, and even if you record somebody for 1 hour, there is a lot of information there that you, and I would say that one reason why I'd like to do a business in this field is that every person, especially older people, have valuable and important things to share with the world. And I want to be a person to help them get that information shared in various formats. And for me right now, it's been a blog. Okay, so this slide here is, I want to give you some examples of family history now. Because now we're talking about living people. So this is where I show a distinction between genealogy and family history. So this is a picture party that I think it was 2010, that we all gathered. And I asked my cousins and the elders in the family to bring whatever old photographs they had to this event. It was at my cousin's house in Maine. And these were almost all the people that showed up. But the idea is, and then I wrote an article about it, you see, and I used some of those photographs for other stories in my work. So that's just an example of having your living family members get involved in the work that you're doing as a genealogist / family historian. Another way to do it is to talk to your siblings. So I sent an email out a few months ago, and I have an email list with all my siblings. It includes my mother, and I think it includes my uncle, and maybe my father's cousin in Canada. So you choose, you can create a little mailing list. So when you send an email out on that mailing list, it will go to all those people. You just type it up once, and it will go to all those people. So I sent a message and it said, if any of you have any stories or brief statements about the gully in back of our house, reply to this email. I'm going to add a post to the blog about the old canal that used to be there. So we grew up alongside the dried up canal, but we called it the gully. And it was one of the places that drew quite a little story from my sister. You see, it's amazing how what you get when you ask. So I'll read to what she said, and I think it's on the next slide. So this is I just did this weekend, and this is one of the newest blog posts that I want to do. I have a list of about 10 or 12 articles that I want to write, today, if I had the time. And so this is kind of maybe difficult to read, but this is a picture of the house that I grew up when I was a child. And then behind it, it's a very deep gully, cavern. And it used to be a major canal that has quite a bit of history to it. So what I did was, this is a picture of what the canal looks like today. So I made a comment about how it's drier, more green, and not as deep, didn't look as deep, because I was a kid then. So I can't believe that I'm writing about this little valley, but I think it's great to share with others what some other family members are saying. So my sister says, she goes, I spent my life in that gully. I played in it all the time, including winter, but the fondest memories were the Tarzan swings. And there were 2 of them. They were so much fun. The neighbors used to dig for those old medicine bottles. Every house on Sergeant Street had a slew of them in their windows. They also had a collection of frogs that came up from the gully. I remember all the frogs' eggs I collected from a pond and brought them up to my mother. She must have loved that. So there's another example. So, next slide, please. So now, I want to reiterate about the difference between genealogy and family history, and that the difference between genealogy and family history is writing about what's known and then sharing it is where you're finding records and you're finding maybe newspaper articles about somebody that's no longer living. And then there's a slight difference between that and interviewing somebody that is still living, that the information might become more real and more rich. So that story I got from my sister, I would have never, if she wasn't living, I would never know that she had all that information about the gully. I know one thing about the gully is that everyone collected bottles, because there were a lot of bottles in the ground. And everybody was doing that, but I didn't realize she was into the swings and to the frogs. So the next thing that comes up with this idea of getting information and then sharing it is you want to put the information that you researched in genealogy or that you collected through interviews, and you want to put it into a context that will be enjoyable, that will be interesting, and that can be shared. So that becomes the writing part. So I consider myself a genealogy researcher and a family history writer. So the key words, researcher and writer. Okay, so that those two pieces will make a family history. I think of a genealogy as kind of like the nuts and the bolts. But when you end up writing stories and sharing the information in a format that's interesting, there is the family history. Okay, so let's go on. So this is a name that I'm working on for a business, and it is the reason why I wanted to share this in the presentation is because the messages that I want to share is about having you record your living people that can share information and stories and ideas that they have in their heads while they're still here. And another thing I want you to want to share is the idea of legacies. It's not just a story and it's not just a record, but if you put it all together, it becomes what I want to consider to be a legacy, and that is so important. So I wanted the name Share or the name Sharing in the title of my business, and that is why I came up with that name. Okay. So this is what I get when I share. I get feedback from my family. That's very gratifying. I don't need to read those because you can see those. But it's, my nephew. These are guys who are just busy in the world and they're doing their own thing. But he reads my blog post. And they're really appreciative of it. And what's interesting? They're so appreciative that they don't meddle with me as far as like when there's a break of time and I haven't put out some information or stories. They don't say, well, why come you're not writing? They wait for me to do it again, which is, I think, incredible. So it's a labor of love for me. So now here starts the story of my great-grandmother. And this, Jack and Adam, my father here on the left, his brother on the right. And this is where my story example for you starts. The telling of family history often starts with a question or a picture. In fact, when I sat down and I visited my family this weekend, and I had pre-selected around 4 to 5 photographs that I wanted my mother to talk about. And that's all we did. I had some photographs, and one of them was at a dinner event that my grandfather used to have us all go at like reunions every year. And we would go to this restaurant, and everyone was there. And there's a picture of the adults that were there, and my mother's there with this beehive haircut. And it looked so interesting to me. I'll use the word interesting. And I didn't realize until this weekend that she said that wasn't even her hair.
Yeah.
Put something on top of it.
We know about
I would never know that.
We do. We know about that.
It looked pretty interesting. And my aunt had her hair up, and I go, is that her real hair? She goes, my mother says, yeah, I think that's her real hair. So you can get interesting stories even from one picture. But select those pictures and select the questions you want to interview before you talk to the person that you want to talk to. So that's very important to prepare. So not just to sit down and, you could record a conversation on the fly, but I think it would be better to be ready with what you want to ask. I'm going to be providing you some questions today. I think you have it on the handout there. Those are from Family Search, and then you can get the questions from so many sources. If you do a regular search on the internet, there are many. So it's not being able to get the questions. It's choosing the right questions that you want to ask, and choosing the right photographs that you want to have them talk about. So this was really why I started genealogy in the first place. It was this straight man, my father, and my loving uncle, who did not really get to know their grandmother at all. In fact, I think if they met once. And there's a reason for that, which we don't fully understand. We have speculation as to why, but that's not really what I want to talk about today. It has to do with whatever my grandfather, I can just mention really quick that we think it's because he married outside of the faith. He married a woman that was in another faith. And that, Polish people, I think, were pretty diehard with they had the rules they were following. And so that may be why there was a break. But I really wanted to, I like researching, and I like experimentation and discovering. So back in 2007, I went to a library in North Carolina, and I did a general search on Ancestry using since Ancestry you can use at a library. Most libraries have it for free because they have a library connection. But if you want to use it at home, there is a monthly fee involved. So that would be the most common genealogy website that people use. So back in 2007, that's when I said, oh my gosh, I went to this meeting where my brother was living. It was a genealogy meeting. They were meeting once, it's a genealogy club once a month. And some reason I decided I want to go to that. And my brother didn't want to go, but his wife did. So we both went, and that's when my love started. And that's when I said, you know what, I really want to find more about this family and why they did not know their relatives from New York. So my search started. The only thing these two guys knew about their grandma was that she was from Poland and that her nickname was Bessie. Okay, so let's start there. Next slide, please. Here's Bessie. And I want to start calling her Bronislava. It actually should be a W there, but her real name was Bronislava Podorski, or Podorska. A lot of the Polish people, for the females, would have an A at the end of the surname. And then she married a man named Sczulinski, my great-grandfather. And then there's another whole story about the name difference. So we won't get into that. But I wanted to, so genealogy, one way to get into genealogy without being overwhelmed by it is to decide on one question you want to have answered. It might involve one ancestor. It might involve just one thought or idea that you want to get an answer to. So that's what I did with her. This whole mess of information I'd like to get, but I decided to focus on it. This is a picture that came from my aunt's scrapbook. And I believe it's the only picture we have of her. That's why it's not the greatest quality, and it's an interesting image. And to me, it makes it. I keep thinking it's back in Poland, but I believe this was taken. I shouldn't say that. I really don't know. It might be a Polish picture, but I'm thinking since it's in my aunt's scrapbook, that it might have been taken in New York, where they moved to when they immigrated. Okay, so let's go on. So my question became, where in Poland did Bronislava come from? So that was what I wanted to find. And I have this image here because genealogy is like stepping stones. And a lot of these are finding records as you go along the way. And you'll see the records I have in the example, you'll see what I mean. It's kind of like a stepping stones approach where you get to the point where you got your answer. And in this case, I got my answer, which was because I wanted to show you a successful example. So here we go. So okay. So here is where we do a distinction in genealogy, where we go, we're getting information online. So it's possible for you to find a record in the Ellis Island website that shows that this individual traveled from Hamburg, Germany in 1901 and landed in New York, was processed through Ellis Island, and then it showed on, so here she is. Their spelling there was the Y. Of course, there's lots of, you find different spellings. Shows the date that she was on that ship. And I also have another image, another record that shows her leaving Hamburg. So that's arriving and departing. So you get two different images. So you can confirm it that way too. So let's go to the next slide. And here is an image of the actual ship's record from that ship called the Pretoria that she was on in 1901. And this is her, you can't really see it too well because, and this is the reason why my journey continued, the stepping stones. Because I couldn't get, if this was handwritten really clearly, I might have been able to find the town where she came from. But the town, it was not readable here. Now, this is a record I came up with when I was living in California about 2010, maybe 2011. I found this record with a friend of mine I used to research a lot at the library. And that's also fun, by the way. If you know somebody like when we have our iPad club, you get together and you have common interests. So you might have to find a genealogy buddy so you get even more motivated when you're working with somebody. So this actually shows that she was 33. What we do know is that she was 33 and she was with her husband. And I haven't found the marriage record. I'm assuming they were married. But he was there. He was he was 33. She was 30. Okay. And so we did. And then there's a reference over here that looks like Schenectady to me. So this is where they ended up going. So I have a feeling that despite the fact that we can't read this, that they had a friend or a relative in Schenectady that they ended up going to when they were processed through Ellis Island. And this is an image. This is an image of the actual passenger record. It shows the ship. It shows the year. And it does show a place of residence, but that place of residence, the spelling was so awkward to me that I couldn't end up finding the real residence until later. Okay, so let's go on. So here is a turning point. I strategically placed this slide here. And the reason why I did was because we're going to change now from doing an online work to hitting the pavement. Okay, so now, this, by the way, this is an image that is copyrighted by the California Genealogical Society. It's on their website. You can purchase that, actually. It's a poster. And the whole idea is that the internet is here, but look what really, the real work of genealogy is really hardcore, in-person, driving, talking to county courthouse clerks, and so on. Librarians, by the way, there are some expert genealogy people that are librarians. So it can be a very social business. It's not all sitting home and just, just sitting there for hours and hours. I did that for this presentation, but I like doing that. So, okay. So now we're going to, we're on the other side of the fence, where I got this in person. I actually went to Schenectady last June, and I went to the city hall, and I obtained her death record, excuse me. This is her death record, and I tried to obtain my grandfather's birth record, her first son, but for some reason it wasn't there. And it could be lots of reasons why it wasn't there, but it just wasn't. So I still haven't found his actual birth record, and I'm thinking that the family, they immigrated in 1901, he was born in 1902. It's as possible, in my thinking, that the family decided that they may not have known about the need to register their child's birth, or they just decided they didn't want to. So that's the reason why it's not on file. But I did obtain her husband's and hers. And this was filled out by her son, Walter. So that's one of the two great uncles from that previous slide. And guess what? You can hit the slide once. Does it give me the town where she moved from? So I was so excited. I paid, you pay some money for these records sometimes. New York State, you need to pay a fair amount of money. I think it was $22. But yeah, other places, and like in my hometown, you can just go up to the city hall and they'll give it to you for free. And you just wait for them to go in the other room and come back, and there it is. You say, well, I waited. But I waited, and I got the answer I already knew. So it just made me more motivated to continue the search and get to the answer to my question. So, remember I pointed to the church record back on the list of records? Well, it turns out that the church, that they were diehard Catholics, right? They would go to church, and it was so important to them. They had two churches. I went to both churches. And you have to have a friendly, determined approach. Because sometimes it is like a gatekeeper, especially with old records, that they don't want people to touch the books sometimes. And indeed, I didn't get to touch the books. I didn't even see them. But I befriended a woman for 45 minutes in her office when she had some time. And she was interested. She was asking me questions about my family. And I was asking her, is it okay if you look up my family name for any records that you have? And these ended up being sacramental records. And she ends up sending me 3 months later. So it was a long wait, but it was a wait well worth it. She sent me this is the baptism of my grandfather, who I couldn't find the birth certificate at the city hall, but the church sent me a copy of his handwritten in Latin, and at least the form is in Latin, and written out by the priest in that time. And his birthday was indeed the 29th of December. I always remember my grandfather having his birthday right after Christmas. And here's his father's name. Here's his mother's name. They're listing the place where his father came from in Poland. It doesn't say Poland anymore. It says the place. And so you can hit it one time. And here is what the answer to my question from my great-grandmother is right there. So it's spelled in a certain way that now, a friend of mine who does Polish work in Berkeley, she's such a great help. I mean, you have friends when you're doing this work, and they help you. So she ended up going online to the FamilySearch.org website, and she looked based on what we could decide what this town name was, and she tagged a few microfilm that from Salt Lake. It cost us $7.50, right, to rent it, and they send it to your nearest library. So I had them send. I had a marriage one, and I wanted to check to try to find the marriage record of this couple, and I wanted to find the birth record of this woman. So I had them send what I thought would have the birth record and the marriage. I was successful on one of them. Guess which one I was successful? She thinks marriage. Anybody else? You'll see. I don't want to spoil it again, but because then the slide won't be so exciting. So let's go on. It is the birth. I found my great-grandma's birth record. Through this stepping stone process, I was able to find this. I went to the Worcester Library and spent at least 5 hours, right? Because they're all in Polish or they're in Russian, right? And some of them are in Latin, but mostly they're in Polish or Russian. I believe this is Polish. So, or it could be. If anybody's a language expert, it's either Polish or Russian. So, okay, hit it one time, please. And that just I wanted to make sure that you see that is her name. There she is, right there. And we don't have time to show you the translation and everything, but there it is. And so the next slide.
It's 15 minutes.
Thank you. So here is you can hit it one time, please. So now I can share with my family and have the gratification of finding something I really wanted to find. This is the town. This is the actual town. I did a search on this just recently to get more information from Wikipedia that there is a town called this. And this comes from the birth record. This is, in that previous slide, it states in that language, this was the town where she was born. And now I know that when I go to Poland, I've been to Poland once, I wasn't anywhere near there. So now I know where to go next time I get there. So just a couple words, we're ending in just, I'd say, less than 5 minutes, we'll be done. And I just wanted to share about how genealogy can be done on using other platforms. And one of them is Facebook. And I didn't believe it until I actually did it. But I created a Facebook family page. And I found that out from a magazine, one of the genealogy magazines. They show websites that you could use to share and write about genealogy, and this was one of them. So I created, it's called the Alberts of Westbrook. Then my last slide, you'll see who Albert is, because that's another reason why I got really excited about genealogy. So this is open to about, I think there's about 20 people on there now, or maybe there's 23 people, somewhere in the low 20s. And it's a private page, so people have to. I figure, this is a picture of. I'm in there, by the way. But I end up as the administrator of the page. I can add. I usually do this for photographs. I don't really use this for writing. I use my blogs for writing, and I use Facebook for showing photographs that draw up stories. Okay. So I think this was during one of the, it's a Catholic, it was a confirmation, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which one's you?
Well, I'll just give you a clue. I'm in red. There's a lot of red here.
Easter first name.
I'm right here. And this is the woman who told us about the gully.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, and I want to just show you an example of another picture I posted on that page. And it actually created, see, what's really great about Facebook and other websites that you can share, and blogs, by the way, you can share. So when you create an article on a blog, there's a place where you can add a comment, and I get stories that way. But this is real time, it's usually short, like Twitter is, it's information that's short, and it provides links to other places. But this one, we start out, and I put this picture up, and I had made a mistake of the identification of that woman. I had thought that, my mother said it was, well, it says it here, I thought it was Antoinette, right, one of my ancestors. Well, one of my cousins says, I think I remember that she was totally different, that Antoinette looking totally different than this picture. And then she said, I go, thank you, Diane. I think you're right. I'm going to confirm that. So I called my mother that day. And I said, Ma, you remember that picture with Pepe? This is my grandfather there. And indeed, the woman standing next to the man, Pepe, is named Aunt Annie. So it's a sister of, this was not Pepe's sister, it was his wife's sister. You see, so that's what's neat about Facebook. I mean, you don't want to, you want to have it be 100% accurate, but I'm a human being, sometimes I make mistakes. But yet, this was a format that it could be discovered and discussed, just like that. And that, of course, if I had an image like that on my blog, somebody could respond in a comment on the blog, and could happen, but it might happen slower. This is really real time. Usually people that use Facebook, they'll check it once a day or once a week, and it's fairly quick. Okay, so next slide. So, to summarize, one thing that I want to really stress is this idea that I started with at the beginning, and that is the importance of collecting information, stories, ideas from the living elders in your family or others that have stories, and to record it in various formats. Recording these days with technology is so easy. So I would say try to do that today and not wait, because my uncle is in the hospital right now, and I interviewed him because he was a man who ran a business, and I want to write a story about that business. But I had interviewed him quite a few years ago because I've been doing the work for a while now. But if he's not well right now, so it would have been too late if I wanted to do it today. And so these are some ideas for you to get started. So one of them is, you could do that the pedigree chart, and I have some samples that I can show you. What family artifacts do you now know exist? So these could be even Bibles from the past. There might still be Bibles around, but certainly photographs. I mean, usually people have more than enough, right? And then my mother actually has a news clipping book where she has a whole mess of articles that I have been using in my family history. Things like when she went to family events, whether they were, and then obituaries are usually in the form of newspaper articles. So, yeah, so that's where you can get, and there might be one person in the family, so you want to decide who to talk to that might have a lot of that information. So record them, and it could be informally or formally. So let's go to the last slide. And now this is, I'd like to end on an up note in terms of one of the blogs that I have is an honor to my grandfather. And I would like to just spend 20 seconds to read this. So it says, this blog has been created to showcase the family history and genealogy of Craig Sczulinski. As a fitting tribute to my grandfather, August Elbert, I have named this blog in his honor. Dictionary.com defines August as inspiring reverence or admiration. Based on this definition, my father could not have been given a better name. So here he is, And he was like the patriarch of our family in so many ways. And it really spurred me on to create a blog just for this. That's the Alberts. And I ended up creating a family page on Facebook as well. And this is my mother and my oldest sister, and there he is again, and that's his sister. And he used to live at the beach, which was part of my upbringing, was I got to go to the beach every Sunday and visit my grandfather. So that was really exciting. And that, by the way, is what was exciting to you when you were growing up. There's a starting point right there for you to tell about your own history. Because I really, really want you to record whoever today is living that has stories and information that you can use to be shared in a legacy format for your own family. But you are part of that legacy. So these days it's easy to record others or to record yourself. Now there are some, oh yeah, there's one more, sorry, there's one more. I'd like to end, this is a quote, and I actually have something else to say about this as well. There's a man that wrote an article, his name was Peter Zane. He wrote an article regarding the topic of virtual immortality. And it was in a New York Times article in March of 2013. And he said, I quote him, he said that he thinks that there's a cultural shift recognizing the importance of ordinary lives. And that is where I am driven towards, is getting to help people tell their stories and get it documented. This quote also is on a similar idea. So thank you so much. Oh, you can hit one more time. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here. And there is a contact form if you want to, we do have a few minutes if you want to ask a couple questions.
The videotape is 1 hour, so what we'll do is we'll close the formal presentation for our home viewers. For people at home and people here, if you are interested in genealogy classes or pursuing this, you need to make sure that we know that at the front desk. Leave that information before you leave. And thank you very much, Craig, for your very informative work.